Hey kids, it's Jurassic James from Jurassic James Plains. We're looking at Proboscideans. So first of all, I've been gone for a while. Sorry about that. Life has been a lot. This video is the first of its kind. This is the first time I've done a video where the toys weren't all mine. This video is an honor and inspired by and promoted by my friend Jim Connor, who I have been looking for a Colombian mammoth figure for 1,000 years, and he actually found it, a company Eofauna, and so he requested that I did a video. He actually, let's see, I will unbag it later. He requested I do a video on this topic because he has a lot of these different kinds of elephants. Speaking of which, Proboscidean, we don't want to call the group elephants because elephants are a modern group. So in general, you have the older ones here. Now they're all different, sometimes different species, multiple different species. We're seeing from like 20 million years ago to today. So they're kind of in timeline order. So I'm going to make it as short and sweet as possible. Because if you want a video about individual species, let me know in the comment section. But in general, he found this cool company, so I'm kind of blending my figures with his figures to fill in his story and explain proboscids or proboscideans, which are essentially, to you, the viewer, it would be the elephant family, but it's not in its relatives. But it's not just elephants. It's kind of like saying primates, like humans. Well, we're kind of the weird new ones. You know, we're here. There's other kind of things that are primates, right? So first and foremost, the earliest. How do we start? There is a plan. But the idea is that people often think that, like, why weren't there elephants in dinosaur times? Well, the role, the niche, the environment job that elephants occupy now, the dinosaurs did. You know, your sauropods, your triceratops, they were those large animals that were in the environment. And so it wasn't they were wiped out that these guys were able to replace them. And even then, in early Paleogene, we still have things like brontotheres and these other large mammals. And so they're taking those roles of large herbivore that the dinosaurs left behind. And so it wasn't until about, especially in the movie Ice Age, there's these little pig-like things called Moratherium. They look like great pigs. Those are considered by some to be some of the earliest elephant relative ancestors that can kind of identify. It's not until about 30 million years ago we see actual forebears of the elephants, these little trunks being formed and all of that, right? And so those things are made in toys that I can find at least. And so I will start in the Miocene about 20 million years ago. And so the animals that precede the elephants that we know today are called gomphotheres. Now, in general, I'm going to show you this. Okay, this is there's no year. Oh, it just says mastodon. Okay, it's a Bullyland company, so this is a Gomphotherium actually, and Gomphotheres are special because to you and I, to the average casual observer, they appear like elephants, but instead of having the two tusks on top, they have a separate set of tusks on the bottom. That's the main trait that stands out to them. Initially, the ancestors of elephants would have been in the Oligocene and Eocene epochs. This is post-dinosaurs, before the Ice Age, 40, 50 million years ago. They would have been like forest kind of dwelling near the edge of the forest because there was more forest back then, right? And so how long the trunk is a really big debate. First of all, I want to point out the idea that we don't have that fossilized. We look at muscle attachments, and that is one of the cool things I would say about studying proboscids. Proboscids, you think of the monkeys. Proboscideans are these things. Is that we do have modern elephants to compare them to. With dinosaurs, we're looking at birds and reptiles, comparing the parts and kind of synthesizing and seeing which feature. With this, we can just see muscle attachments. Where are they on the skeleton? Where on their skeleton, right? Similar thing. And so these gomphotheres, these guys start all of them, all of the elephant lineage start in Africa, and they migrate out. And so for the first 10 million years, they're in Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Then they go across to Asia and Europe, right? So gomphotheres are known for that. So this is a Bullyland figure, still on sale in eBay's older figure. My first non-elephant relative was this guy here, Amblodon. And so these are commonly called these shovel tuskers because you can see on the bottom of his mouth, it has the two tusks going down, but these two large shovel-like teeth. So when I was a kid, back in my day, we thought that not that we the kids, the scientists at the time, thought that they were eating water plants. So imagine like you go to a swamp or not even a swamp, like a watery kind of bog area, and there's vegetation growing on the water surface, that these teeth being shovel-shaped would be able to go under the water and pick up the plants like that, right? But a study shows, a recent study in China, I believe, showed that looking at they have a cousin called, this is Amblodon, found in North America. There's one called Platymelodon, which is very similar to structure, but the tusks on the bottom are a little bit more, the teeth are more sharpened. That they actually, given the wear taking the tooth, putting it in a microscope, looking at how it's worn down, suggests it's eating like rougher plant material. So it's like stripping from trees and things. So again, that's something that looking at it superficially and going, oh, it's like a shovel, makes sense. Well, it turns out the actual science of studying the teeth and the wear and comparing to other animals is like, oh, it's actually eating tougher plants, which is cool. This isn't one of my figures. I remember getting it in the what year was this anyway? This is a Safari 2005. So it's when I first kind of when I was branching out in prehistoric mammals. Which brings me to Jim's first figure. It's the one here, and again, I was going to call it Kenobi Blodon. It's Canobelodon. So Ambledon, Canobelodon. So very important that these are tied together because this guy was thought to be a genus, a species of this, and then this is from Asia, and so people, some paleontologists got together, looked at the skeleton, and how does this work? In paleontology, or in any science really, like you'll look at the specimen, you compare the parts, and then you write down all of these features. You outline these ideas of here's this feature, and you can argue it should be some species, given its time period, given its locality, given its features. So these guys are actually a separate genus now. The difference, of course, is that this guy has these like shovel-like lower teeth. This guy has a 4. And again, you may look at that and go, oh wow, it has 4 teeth. These large, well, actually it has more. These are like tusks. They actually are large teeth in the back for grinding and chewing. And that seems weird to you. But I will remind you that at some point when you were a formative child, if you may be one now, you saw a book about elephants. And you saw something like this with 2 large tusks and go, oh yeah, that's the norm. And then now you're seeing something with these tusks on the bottom and go, well, that's weird. But imagine a world, turn back to some kind of alternate universe, where you saw that first, and then you would see this later, and you're like, oh, that's weird. It only has 2 tusks, So it's about perspective. Keep that in mind in science in general. And so again, it's not like we're dinosaurs or we're trying to guess the color or whatever. I mean, it could have been pink. Who knows? But the idea here is that the skin texture, the overall anatomy, it suggests what it should be. So again, I'm not sitting here going, well, I don't know if that number of toes. Like it's the parts are all there. The main thing we're looking at, since we're not trying to figure out how this animal moved or overall looked, because we have modern analogous, we can now look at more detail like how did it feed, what are the evolutionary pressures on it. So that being said, these first 3 guys, they are from the Miocene. And the big deal with the Miocene is that it's about 20 million years ago, actually between 5 million years ago and like 23 million years ago, somewhere in that range, the introduction of grass. And so grass, we can tell fossils of grass have been found as late Cretaceous, but it was very rare. By the Miocene, we have this explosion of grass fields, right? So what is this like? Imagine in your mind from Jurassic to Cretaceous, we go from Jurassic period where we have all these sauropod long necks, right? And there's essentially no flowering plants. There's conifers, there's ferns, like that. In the Cretaceous period, we have an explosion towards the end, of flowering plants that changes the environment, right? Well, in the time right after dinosaurs, the Paleogene, which includes the Paleocene, the Eocene, the Oligocene, between 65 or 66 and like 30 million years ago, you are looking at more forested areas. So the mammals are in forested areas mainly. And around the Miocene, around 2 million years ago, grass just is everywhere. And so if you don't know, grass is very hard to digest. I always ask people on tours, I'll be like, who here eats grass? And usually kids are like, usually like 1 or 2 kids are like, I eat grass. I'm like, you shouldn't do that because your teeth are hardest of 5, and grass has silica in it, which is a 7, so it's your teeth down. Which is why horses and elephants around this time, elephant ancestors, begin to grow bigger and stronger teeth to wear out of grass and break down the grass. Which brings me to the next one. Now, I have one like this that I actually bought at the Houston Gym Mineral Show when I was a college student. This is a Woollyland Dinotherium. This is Jim's Eofauna Dinotherium. And here's my, what company is it again? Mojo, right, cool. Dinotherium. So what's the big deal with these guys? Dinotheres are elephant relatives. They are not the direct ancestors of modern elephants, but they look kind of like them. The difference is they have no upper tusks. They have 2 tusks in the lower other part of their chin. And that was used to murder, I'm kidding. That we don't know exactly what it's used for. The two main thoughts would be A, feeding, because eating is really important, or B, some kind of territorial display, fighting for male fighting for female, etc., like that, right? And so that's the assumption with these things. Again, there's many theories out there. People are researching them. Dinosaurs are special. They're really big. They're one of the largest of the elephant groups, Proboscideans group, but also one of the largest mammals of all time. So they're kind of special to note there. I know. I remember I first was introduced to these, and there's Walking with Dinosaurs, and there's Walking with Prehistoric Beasts, and they show these guys chasing early human ancestors. And so I was like, "What is that weird elephant?" As a kid, and now I have I have this one and one like this up there. Mine's older and beaten up. Jim's is much nicer. And so, what's the big deal? These guys are found in Africa. They stretch out to Asia. They have very limited range compared to other like the gauntlet theories go really far. And mastodons too, actually. But in general, you're seeing again the general elephant body. We're not guessing on its appearance. We're not saying, well, the toes are this or that. It's an elephant, right? And so, elephant-like animal, right? And so, notice the ears are all small on these models. We don't want to guess large ears. And I'll get to why towards the end. So, big picture. The early proboscideans, 30 million years ago, forested. Oh, side note. It's thought that the trunk evolution comes from the expansion of grass. That the trunk is holding the grass down, and they're using these little tusks to kind of cut it as they walk through, right? Like a mower kind of thing. And so we have forested first before these guys. Then the grass ends show up. And so that is not trying to make people mad, just observing science. The idea of climate change. Now, that means something today in a political sense, but the climate has changed several times in Earth's history from different events. So before we have the grass showing, that's a climate shift. So the earlier elephant types, or Proboscideans, are gone. They're replaced by these guys. So from the end of the Miocene, or middle of the Miocene, I want you to also remember that just like in the late Jurassic North America, you have the Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus and Camarasaurus and others, and Barosaurus, all these different sauropods. The elephant Proboscidean types, there were multiple of the same species in the same environment. So you would go, like today we think of African elephant, Asian elephant, but then you go to Africa and you see 3 or 4 elephant type of things in the same environment. That's really cool. So I would say the Miocene like the Jurassic of the mammals, right? So as the climate gets colder, the ice age is coming, right? When I say ice age, the word ice age is typically slang. There are ice ages in Earth's history. The last one was the Pleistocene, the big ice age, when we remember the species, right? And so in the beginning of that, we have the steppe mammoth in Europe. So here we have the Eofauna steppe mammoth figure. We don't, if I understand, we don't know how hairy it was. And we don't know, I mean, these guys would have had hair like elephants, but because they're found in Africa and lower southern Asia, they probably had less hair because it wasn't as hot, right? Here's what company is this? Papo, of course, steppe mammoth. So this is like the early to mid Pleistocene of the Ice Age. And so there's about to be the precursor to the woolly mammoth, or the ancestor woolly mammoth in Europe. What's really cool about this is that there's something that Jim has that I did not know existed in a toy, the straight-tusked elephant, which is a southern European elephant. So you think about Europe, you think about the Ice Age, you're imagining glaciers and woolly mammoth and all that. One, it's before it gets that cold. 2, southern Europe, southern France, Italy, Greece, those areas are not really cold all the time. So why wouldn't the elephants there, or Proboscideans, be less hairy? So these two are contemporaries. Southern Europe, Northern Europe. So, again, where most of my videos, I'm like, look at this feature here. It's an elephant. It's a big hairy, or hairless, or it would have had hair, but not as like long, thick hair. And so what makes the steppe mammoth special, I mean, as far as woolly mammoths go, is that their tusks turn like this, whereas woolly mammoth tusks are getting like Manny and Ice Age. Okay, so towards the middle to late of the Pleistocene, we have 2 things going on. First of all, in North America, we have the mastodon. So here's the Eofauna mastodon, American mastodon. Here is the, if I remember correctly, 2018 Safari. I have this one too up there, actually. And so, mastodons. Okay, here's the thing. Old lineage. This branched off like 30 million years ago and ended in the Ice Age. Their teeth. So, a mammoth tooth, like a woolly mammoth tooth, for example, or a Columbian mammoth tooth, look like the bottom of a not hiker, what do you call them, when you're running, your running shoes, your tennis shoes. It has like that zigzag pattern. It's very flat for grinding grass. Mastodon teeth look like this. They have these two rows of ridges for grinding and eating vegetation. They eat roughage. So you're saying, what's the big deal? We have these mastodons and mammoths side by side. The word mastodon is actually a slang term. So the proper genus is mammut, M-U-M-M-U-T, mammut. People from Europe know that. Other countries know. Americans know mastodon, the American mastodon. The idea is that I had a friend of mine who was a tour guide, and people they were saying mastodon on the tour. I trained them and everything, and they were like, the people from like France are going mammut, and they're like, she's like, no, it's mastodon, and they're like mammut, and like, no, it's pronounced mastodon, and I told her later on, no, it's the moot, that's the actual genus. I showed her on the label, you know. But the idea is that these guys are eating roughage, or eating leaves and brush like that, where mammoths are eating grass. So you could have two large elephant things in the same environment, but eating different plants, they're not competing with each other, right? Also, humans seem to want to kill mammoths more than mastodons. I don't know why. There's more of their kills than theirs, right? So, part of why I haven't done videos in a while is that I've been very sick with allergies. So I've been dealing with grass and stuff. I'm allergic to all the grasses. It's great. All of them. 100%. Anyway, the point is, as far as mammoths go, like I said, and if you want, I can do it. Like I said, the ones I've gotten from Jim, like these guys, they belong to Jim. I don't have my own copy. But for example, woolly mammoth, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 12 woolly mammoths. I can do a video on just this genus alone. But he has shown us, see, I think it's Papa, right? Yeah, 2008 Papa, woolly mammoth. He sent the list. Make sure I'm saying the right company's name. Woolly mammoth. This is one of the British Museum. I remember I had one of these. British Museum, 1975, which was, again, back then was like before all this is the thing. And then this is the mark, to remember correctly. All right, whoa, Papa, where's something for the word? I'm searching for the word. Woolly mammoth. British Museum. Oh, NPC, 1961. So this is the oldest one here, actually. So, my friend Jim is very thorough. He's how I could have been if I were less scatterbrained. And so the idea is that even though they're different makes of the figure, you can see the general thing is they're big hairy elephant with a bump on their head. Their back slope downwards. Their tusks arch like this. They're eating grass. And so the woolly mammoth is the last. Well, I don't want to say that. I do know mammoth relatives. So think of it this way: mammoths are Pleistocene things. These are Miocene, early Pliocene, like that. So the Pleistocene is their heyday. They're hairy elephants. They are living in Russia, North America. As a Houstonian, I will point out that we do not have woolly mammoths in the Texas environment because it's too hot. Even in the Ice Age, Texas is too hot. So I was digging in Wyoming with the Indiana Children's Museum, and it was like 80 degrees, 75 degrees. And they were like, oh, Jurassic James, like, how can you wear this outfit? It's so hot. I do wear this stuff in the field. It's not just a camera thing. And I was like, yeah, in Texas right now it's 110 degrees. So this is fine. Anyway, so woolly mammoth. So what's the big deal with these guys? So it is very difficult, and it is hugely debated over telling if a male or female from dinosaurs, for example. But for mammoths, we have an idea, and certain structures in the hips and all that. And so we find that, much like modern elephants, mammoths seem to have herds where there's a matriarch, let's say a grandmother, her daughters, her nieces, their children. The males are on their own solitary. So we tend to see that with these guys in general. What makes mammoths so special is that we find these guys with the hair. And so in Russia, as the glaciers were melting into the last ice age, they're migrating north, following the glaciers and grasslands. And some of them would fall into ice and be buried in a block of ice as big as this room. And they would find it. And I do know, remember as a young college student, they found a mammoth, they cut it, they cut some meat off of it, and they cooked it, which is really weird. I will say, like, they did it like it was nothing, and I was like, ugh, gross. So they said it tastes freezer burn, as you could imagine, after 10,000 years in the ice. But I can only give another example. When I was being trained by the museum curators, the paleontology curator David Temple, the zoology curator Dr. Dan Brooks, they were talking about their fields. But the malacology curator Tina Pelway, she was talking about how different snails, malacology being study of mollusks, snails, clams, squid, and all that, how they taste. And that was weird to me, that someone would study something that they've actually eaten. And she explained to me, in the world of melanchology, you're going out into the world, you're meeting people, they're harvesting these things, you're buying collections and all that. And part of the cultural thing is you're being invited to their home, you're eating, and they're eating the local food, which is these animals. And so that was kind of weird. So bear in mind, I hear that they cut open a mammoth and ate it. I was like, ugh. Anyway, but we find brown hair. Sometimes you can go online and buy mammoth. I don't know how to test if it's true or not, but it's a warning from me. But they have brown hair, black hair, mammoth, red hair mammoth. So we know that those are the colors. Plus we see them in cave paintings, so we're like, this is probably what they're looking like, right? And again, big giant elephants, really fun to look at. Now the thing I wanted to point out, I'm going to put YouTube back and talk about the Colombian mammoth. So here's the one. Here's Jim. So Jim still has the what do you call it, the tag on the label on them because he's a professional collector. I do it like an idiot. I open everything up and I touch it and I take the packaging off. This is my new toy. I'm so happy. And so, unlike a professional collector, I'm taking off the tag. That way I can also tell mine from his because he found this wonderful thing. And, ooh, you're not coming off easily, are you? Look at that. Look at me fail on camera. How about that? This is what you wanted to see, right? Just a grown man failing to open a toy. So here is my first time really touching it. This is a Colombian mammoth. So Colombia, you're like, why is it called that? Is it from Colombia, the country? No, the word Colombia is named for America, but it's of Columbus before. So it's the American mammoth. That's the most common name for it. Like Columbia University, before. And so the big deal with this guy is we don't know how hairy it was. So with the woolly mammoth, we find them in ice. It's hairy, long hair. Probably smell funny. You've been to a zoo. But the Colombian mammoth, we have no idea because where they're living in, Oklahoma and Texas, those are not areas that preserve with ice very well. So for the best example of this that I can tell you, I know in was it South Dakota, there's a mammoth site there. I went with my friend, the curator of paleontology, David Temple, and then your Birch Adult Education, HMS, and they have woolly mammoth, Colombian mammoth fossils together in their site. And I will do field trips there again one day. But in Houston, or actually in Waco, Texas, which I also do field trips to, is the mammoth site in Waco, where if you look at most maps, if you see a city, there's usually a river running through it, or two rivers. In the case of Waco, there's two rivers like come together. And so people build a settlement there because you can ship things and water supply and all that. Well, it turns out the mammoths had their own city. No, not a city. But the idea, Mammothopolis, Greek word for city, opolis. Anyway, the idea here is the mammoths were there, and they found essentially a herd, a male female herd, and so the female mammoths and babies are all been cleaned up, and they're not cleaned up, been excavated, and are in collections being studied. In the actual site, you can go there for like $5, and in the site, excuse me, I'm thinking, I have the plot, not the plot. I have the script, but I'm also thinking about it. The idea is that there's a male Colombian mammoth in the site. Now, when I first went there years ago, it was thought that it was like a flash flood that killed them all. They hired a paleontologist since then, and I went with my friend Jim back in June of this year, 2025. And it turns out they were like, actually, they were malnourished. They may have starved to death or had a drought, which is even sadder. But then again, in paleontology, you have to accept that your study has already died. Just how it died is a question, really. And so, more on that later at some point. But the idea is that the Colombian mammoth is really, really unknown, unfortunately. And so, because woolly mammoths just hit, it's in the Ice Age movies, it's with Flintstones, all those kind of shows are there. And for some reason, people just don't know this figure, which is why there hasn't been one made into toys. And I think I found one years ago that was like $400 for like a figure this big. I'm like, no, I wanted just something like this. So anyway, let's put this back. Let's put Jim's up front. Put mine. Welcome home, buddy. Ending this part of the video, we're going to look at, we have 3 species of elephant today. I only have two though, 2 species. There's a baby, father and mother, male and female, of Indian elephant, or Asian elephant, and African elephant. There is now a new species of forest elephant that was established in Africa. There are no toys of it that I'm aware of. So, again, I want to do 3 things with you. We've been through this history of proboscideans. I want to give you 3 things to point out. First of all, elephants are the largest land animal living today. The tallest is giraffe. The largest animal in general are whales, but as far as land animals go, they're pretty big. what makes them so special is that they are not like dinosaurs. They are way smarter. They have way bigger brains. They have way more. I mean, we can't say they have emotions. The anthropologists are really mad, but they have emotions. And so the idea here is, I want you to think about elephants in general. One, if you've been to a zoo, to appreciate how big they are. I mean, you can see a picture in a book, you can have a toy, you can see, whatever, but when you stand next to the pen and you see this giant thing, that's worth noting. Two, elephants have a cool thing where they can make noise. I mean, they honk and make, it's a trunk and all that, but they actually can like make these vibration noises under the ground. They walk on their toes, essentially, their tippy toes. There's a pad behind that, and they can and if you can't hear it with a human audible ear set, but if you're next to an elephant making this noise, you feel vibration, because of course sound is vibrations, right? And so, again, we can never attribute this to dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are different. They're both large things, sauropods and these guys, but they're different kinds of large things. But the idea of them communicating through the ground, like they say, why? If they trumpet, that can only go so far and bounce off trees. If they make this vibration noise, they can go through the ground, and other elephants can feel it. And so, what's really neat about them in general, the elephants in their lineage, is that if you study dinosaurs, you're looking at this really weird thing from the past. Elephants are a really weird thing right now that we can go look at in zoos or in preserves and in the wild, right? And so there's society that the females stick together with the grandmother, and the fact that when the males get too rowdy, they get, like the teenagers, they get kicked out of the herd and they go form their own little group, or they go hang with males or solitary. We can watch this today. And meanwhile, you look at African elephants and Asian elephants, one of the big differences, I mean, there's multiple differences in the anatomy, but bigger ears, smaller ears. Why? If you're in the savannah and you flap your ears, you can cool off like 10 degrees, because behind the ears, all these blood vessels are cooling off. These guys have more forested areas, they have, smaller ears. So does a forest African elephant. Those minute changes here or there are the difference between these animals. So when you look at a Apatosaurus and a Camarasaurus, or a Brachiosaurus and a Diplodocus, you go, well, they're long necks, they're the same kind of thing. It's like, no, we have two kind of elephants here today. You can look at and compare these two things. You can see how they're different. And that's really important to understand. And so it's not so much that we're studying these animals to understand these guys, although it helps, but just to understand the differences in species, behavior, environment, etc., and try to apply that to the past. And so for paleontologists, that's why it's a really big thing to study modern animals, anatomy, ecology. Because if you want to study dinosaurs, if you love paleontology like I do, you got to look at the real things today and appreciate them. So I've had people and kids particularly say, oh, well, modern animals are boring, but dinosaurs are cool. Well, they were just the animals of their day, The story just keeps being told, just different actors in a play, right? And so that's something to point out in general with their behavior, their characteristics. One thing to point out too with elephants is that they're pretty quiet when they move. So like you can be in Africa and you'll see an elephant and take like 4 steps into the forest and it's gone. That's pretty cool. That animal that big can just disappear almost and blend in really well. Another thing to point out elephants too is that they have to cool off. I mean, well, these Ice Age friends didn't have that issue, but these guys were living in savannas too. So what's the big deal? The Miocene, the Dinotheria, the Platymelodon, Canobelodon. These guys live in open plains. So we think about dinosaurs being warm-blooded, or that's an old term, endothermic really. But the number one thing when you're a large, heated blood animal is that you need to stay cool. So hippos are in water, rhino, they'll lay around in dirt, like that, elephants in mud. And so, again, these are things that are, we're always talking about how big and strong and fast something is, but appreciate the actual biology of the animal, how it's working, how it moves. Elephants don't run. They can walk briskly, trot, no, not trot, what do you call it? Horses can get off the entire ground, like a dog off the ground. These guys can't do that. They're too heavy. They have to have like one of their feet on the ground at all times, right? Unless they're flying with the large ears like Dumbo. That joke was for free. I'm so sorry. You deserve better than that. But the main thing I'm trying to point out is that when you look at these guys, appreciate them within the past, and that Earth, elephants have responded, the proboscideans have responded to 2 different major climate shifts. From the early, before this, the early Cenozoic, with the Eocene and Oligocene with these forests, the grasslands coming in the Miocene 20 million years ago, then the Ice Age starting about 2 million years ago. 3 different climate shifts, and these proboscideans adapted to each one of them. And that's kind of the big story here. Now, as I said before, if you're still watching this, my goodness, thank you for your, whatever you call this, sadness, pity. But the idea is that if you want me to talk about an individual, like because I can do a video of woolly mammoths, I can go on modern elephants, more details. I only have 2 down ears. Let me know. I will be trying to. I hope to buy some more Eofauna figures. Like I said, I think this one, the Colombian, was like $40. So I think I have a lot as it is. But the idea is that if you want to know more, comment, subscribe, etc. Like, please. I've been gone for a while, so YouTube's like, who is this Jurassic James guy you're talking about? He doesn't exist. So that's how the internet talks in my head, like an old grumpy person. Anyway, that being said, I'll see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Jim, for loaning me your collection. I will pack them as neatly and nicely and organized as you packed them for me, and I will deliver them to the museum. That being said, I'll see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in.